I want to talk a little bit about my specialization with truck drivers. I developed a website, truckertherapy.com. Oh, it's been several years back now. I think we're working on 7 years now. And what I do is I specialize in working with truck drivers who are dealing with stress, anger, communication problems, just relationship problems in general. And the way that I do that is because truck drivers have such difficulty keeping appointments just because they're on the road all the time, is I actually come to them. Often we use phone, we might use video conferencing as well, sometimes we use email, and be able to talk about that kind of stuff. So that is something that I've been doing, and I found it to be just amazingly rewarding. Because when I was first a newer therapist, I would have these truck drivers who would come into my office, and they'd say, "Okay, well, all right, this is the first meeting. It's been great. We'll see you in a month. We'll see you in 6 weeks." And I would tell them, "Well, really, I need to see you on a weekly basis in order for this to be helpful." And then, me at the time not really knowing a lot about trucking, they're like, "Well, I have to work. I've got to be out on the road, and the soonest I can come back is, usually in a month or something like that." So what I found pretty quickly was it was either the dilemma of the driver taking time off work and not making any money so they can do therapy, maybe we would speed it up to a couple times a week, or they would just go without. And well, as you've guessed it, the trucker just wouldn't come back, or they would only come back every few weeks, and it wouldn't be nearly as helpful. So I've always been a technology kind of guy, and I had a computer technology minor in college, and I'm thinking, okay, there's surely a way to fix this. And I've always been a fan of, Skype and that kind of thing. And so that's where the idea of trucker therapy was born, and I was able to connect with my clients, and it's just been amazing. It's been very helpful for the truck drivers as well as their families. And one of the things that we do that I pride myself on, I think it's a little even more unique, is to do couples therapy. And when the driver is out on the road and then their partner is at home, um, it would be impossible to do a couple session. And often we just do that on the phone with a conference call. And I find that to be very helpful, and be able to get both sides of the story as to what's going on, and be able to help them out with communication skills and all that kind of stuff. So the majority of my clients are quite comfortable with this mode, because if you're a truck driver, you're used to talking on the phone all the time anyway. And if you're a little bit more of a technologically advanced truck driver, then you use Skype and you use FaceTime and whatever else all the time. So it's like no big deal. And that's something that tends to work pretty well. And I also have a percentage. It's a small percentage, but I do have a percentage of my truckers who, when they're in the area, they stop past my office, and there's a good bit of parallel parking, so you can definitely park a truck out there, and they'll come in and they'll do a session maybe once every few months in person, and then we continue to do the rest of the sessions by phone or Skype or whatever. And it works out pretty well. So the issues that I see truck drivers dealing with on a regular basis is probably really stress related, and feelings of depression, sadness, just simply feeling down. And so we talk about those things, and try to find ways to deal with it. So one of the things that's helpful is just simply to be able to talk about what's going on and have the client just talk about it out loud. And that's often something that just helps him or her to get their feelings off their chest and to deal with it. So that would definitely be one thing. Another thing that I talk with my drivers about would be just simply like communication techniques. So let's say that they're getting into arguments with their, it's often their partner or their family while they're out on the road, and it's some suggestions. Why don't you talk with them this way? Why don't you talk with them that way? Just to be able to adjust your approach. So that's another significant piece that we deal with. Other times we deal with anger, and it might be, like road rage would be the classic, because it's a really stressful job, and often it comes out in your driving. So that's one way, and there might be a whole variety of things that's making the driver angry. So we deal with that too, and I'll tell you that actually a significant percentage of my clients are female truck drivers. So women truckers, they are the minority of the trucking industry, and I think that it's roughly maybe 5%, possibly even less than that, but they make up about half of my trucker therapy clients. And before anybody makes any assumptions and says, okay, well, women truckers have all these problems and all that, don't go there, because I don't think that's what the case is at all. I think what that is the fact that women are more likely to take care of themselves, and women don't see nearly as much of a stigma about talking about your feelings or mental health or anything like that. And one of the unfortunate things is there's so many drivers that are these macho guys, and they don't want to talk about anything and all this kind of stuff, and they feel that they would be too much of a sissy if they talked about how they're feeling down or feeling sad or anything like that. So I just think that it would be just amazing to have that barrier broken so that the men are able to talk about their feelings. And I have plenty of male clients who do, but nonetheless, they have great difficulty. And I think that they need to learn a couple things from the women truckers who are, more open and able to deal with this kind of stuff. So, nonetheless, if you look at the male drivers versus female drivers, it's much of the same thing. Relationship problems, just feelings of isolation, and it's a very stressful job. And it's so many times it's just how do we deal with this stress? How do we make it better? And just talking about some self-care techniques and some ways to just simply cope. And it depends how often you make it home, because so many drivers, they don't get very much home time, and the more home time that they can get, the better off that they will be. So I definitely encourage my drivers to take as much home time as possible. That's something that just helps significantly. So those are the main things that I see. Sometimes there's substance abuse issues there as well, and it's getting a handle on that and figuring out where does that come from. Is that stress related? And often it is. And when you're dealing with a truck, and if you're drinking or doing any other kind of drug, then that's obviously a safety issue, and that needs to be dealt with so it doesn't harm anyone. So sometimes those issues do come up. So nonetheless, I go to truck shows every once in a while, a couple a year. I like to go to MATS, so that's the Midwest Truck Show down in Louisville, and that's one of the biggest truck shows in the nation, and really enjoy that. And it's really cool to connect with the other truck drivers and that kind of thing. And often, every time I go, I volunteer at the St. Christopher's booth. And the St. Christopher's Fund is a foundation that helps to pay the bills of truck drivers who go off the road for medical reasons. So it's not only medical bills, but it's also, you know, help them with their rent, help them with keeping their electricity on and all that kind of stuff if they've had to go off the road. So spend time at that booth, walk around, talk with people, all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty cool. One time I even interviewed Alex Debogorski a couple of years ago. He's from Ice Road Truckers, and it was a really neat interview, and that's on my YouTube channel as well as truckertherapy.com, so I definitely urge you to check that out. So we go there. We also go to Expedite Expo, which was near Cincinnati, and this year it will be in Lexington, Kentucky. And the expediters are the truckers who do the very special deliveries of the smaller stuff, and they drive the smaller trucks, and it's kind of its own niche, and very cool people to work with. And I've got plenty of expediter clients, and their situations are, it's trucking situations, of course, and then sometimes it's a little bit more unique. So I've got some understanding of the expediters as well. And I've got a few cool expediter friends that have told me more about that branch of the industry. So I love working with expediters as well. So yeah, it's so cool to get out and do some truck shows, talk with people. So do all this stuff at a distance, and then a couple of times a year I meet people in person. And I've even had clients who stop past the booth at truck shows, and I've never met them before, and nonetheless we're meeting up at a truck show and talking for a couple minutes. So I think that's pretty cool. So anyhow, that's my trucker therapy stuff, and I do a spot on satellite XM radio every other Tuesday at 6:30 a.m. And oh, that's so early. And I'll tell you what I do is I roll out of bed and it's on the phone. So I just do the phone call and then I go back to bed afterwards. So it's from 6:30 a.m. to 7 Eastern time, and we talk for a half an hour about various mental health counseling types of issues, and we always try to keep it fresh and relevant. And what we do is we also take phone calls from drivers. So they'll call in and, ask all kinds of questions. Just recently we did one on panic attacks. And they were talking about, here are the symptoms. Is this a panic attack? Is it not? And one guy called in and was talking about how he felt like he was having panic attacks, but it turned out to be a physical adrenal gland concern. And so it was pretty cool to discuss that stuff. So we do that every couple of weeks on a regular basis, and always neat to be on satellite radio. And Tim Ridley Show is the name of it, and Tim is a really cool guy. I've met him at a couple of truck shows, and he's definitely a bigger than life kind of guy. And he was a former trucker and has all that information. So a lot of people know Tim Ridley if they're in the industry. So anyhow, that's kind of the idea of what trucker therapy is and what we do. And sometimes I just have local truckers who come in and never do any phone, no video conferencing or anything, and they're local, so I'm able to talk with them on a regular basis, because maybe they're more instead of long haul, maybe they make it home, nightly, or at least on the weekends, and we talk on Friday nights or something like that. So anyhow, I love trucker therapy. It's a pretty cool thing, and I love using technology to reach out to my clients. So yeah, that's the idea of trucker therapy, and urge you guys to check out truckertherapy.com. You can follow me on Twitter or on Facebook.